Good evening and welcome to This Week at the Lake and to Lake TV's special election coverage of the Rivanna County Board of Supervisors election for the Rivanna District. On behalf of the LMOA Broadcast Group, I am Ron Krause and we come to you tonight live from the terrace room in the clubhouse. Although Lake Monticello voters reside in 3 of the 5 county election districts, this forum focuses only on the contest between Rick Kelly and Tony O'Brien in the Rivanna district. Don Weaver is running unopposed in the Cunningham district, and Supervisor Robert Bolingbrook's term in the Palmyra district has not expired. First, the format for the candidates. Each candidate will give an opening statement of no more than 3 minutes. We will then pose questions submitted by members of the community in advance and by the audience here tonight. Questions are screened to avoid the personal, the hostile, or the inappropriate. Candidates will be alerted to complete their answers after 90 seconds. We recognize that several of the subjects under discussion beg for further conversation, so we encourage dialogue between the candidates and we will offer that opportunity. Following the question period of up to an hour, the candidates will have 2 minutes each for a closing statement. It's a pleasure to welcome the 2 candidates for Rivanna's Board of Supervisors from the Rivanna District, both of whom are Lake Monticello residents. Rick Kelly, running as a Republican, and Tony O'Brien, running as an independent. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Thank you for being here and for participating in this forum. Why don't we begin opening statements with Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Ron. And thank you, Ron, for moderating tonight. Thank you also to the broadcast group, of which I was a member not so long ago. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming and those watching at home. I've talked to a lot of people during this campaign, and there are those that say that we need to cut everything. We got massive debt. We need to cut down to the bare bones, no charitable giving, no nothing. And on the other hand, we have persons that say what we have to do is raise taxes. I have a vision of a brighter, happier, thriving Rivanna County. I picture how we arrived there. My vision requires we take balanced, incremental steps to adequately fund our social services, our police department to fully fund our schools, all the while chipping away at our $100 million debt. This is a true albatross across our necks, and we need to attack this if we don't want to end up like Detroit. The lake has all kinds of folks, retired, on fixed incomes, young families, wealthy, not so wealthy, disabled, elderly, and they all need to know there's someone watching out for them. I am dedicated to protecting them, and how will I do this? I will eradicate waste and reallocate money so that we don't furlough teachers. It can be done. Work closely with our county administrator to eliminate any excess spending. I look at it as, do I need this or do I want this? It can be done. I'm going to do my part by not accepting any money from the county for my work as a county supervisor. I'm certain the schools could use this money. I was asked why I would do this. Aside from the fact it's the right thing to do, I've got the know-how, experience, and time to do this job. My father's sense of civic duty I also have. I think he'd be proud. I will increase business revenue by actively seeking business. As a result of my interaction with my friend Rob Bell, I have a stack of state-subsidized economic incentives that could entice business here. UVA has the Virginia Innovation Partnership. I've contacted their office. They match their patents with investors, and voila, a new business is created. Can you imagine a new laboratory inhabiting one of the schools that we closed? It can be done. I will fight against tax increases. This is a cancer and it will grow. A penny here, a penny there. That's how gas got to be so expensive. It can be done. I have a few more points to make, but I see my time is up. I will say this in conclusion. A 1,000-mile journey begins with one step. Tonight, let's take that step together. Please vote for me on November 5th, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. O'Brien.
Mr. Kraus, Lake, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here with Mr. Kelly as well, too. I would say that my political career started in this room, as a matter of fact, about 2 years ago. I was standing in this room when we were being told at that point in time that our taxes would have to go up to about 67.5 cents from 59 cents at that point in time. We were provided with a strong list of reasons as to why that would need to occur. A lot of folks were in this room like they are tonight, and they shook their heads and they said, okay, we understand it. We know that there are some investments that need to be made. We see that things aren't going the way we'd like for them to go. And so I walked away from that room feeling much the same. However, what happened was at a last-minute meeting, a last-minute deal, they decided not to do that. And they decided instead of raising the taxes in a manner that was necessary, in a manner that Mr. Olenbrook and that Mr. Kenny had said we needed to do so that we would not have an albatross around our neck, they decided that they would basically cut it to raise it only by 2 cents. The net result of that was that schools were asked to short fund themselves by almost $2 million. Now, as a father of a daughter in the school system who has benefited greatly from the terrific school system that we have here, that was disturbing to me. I became involved at a local level with a lot of efforts that were being made to help restore the funding to the schools. I stood in multiple Board of Supervisors meetings and called for the restoration of the funds for the schools. And in fact, in part because of my efforts and those of many other in the community, we did restore almost $900,000 to the schools. So that's how it started for me. However, over the course of the last year and a half, I've spent a lot more time looking into the real issues and what's causing this. And what I found is that basically we do not have the economic investment in this county that we need in order to succeed. 93% of the taxes are paid by homeowners. That means that there's only 7% that's being generated by businesses. Why? Because we haven't made the appropriate investments to attract business. Mr. Kelly has told you that, well, you know, we can bring in a patent foundation and they'll open a business here. The problem is we can't open up a building over 12,000 square feet because we don't have a water system to support them in Zion's Crossroads. He tells you that we can go ahead and do all these things without spending any extra money. That's not accurate. We can't do all of those things. We need to make the appropriate investments. There are a lot of us that recognize that this is going to be painful, but if we don't do it, what we'll see happen is that our taxes will continually go up without any change in direction. I'm running because I want to change that direction. I want to change that direction by bringing business to Fluvanna. As a business owner, I have the experience, and I know I can do this. Thank you very much. Please vote for me on November 5th.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Well, all right, let's get to some of the questions that have been sent in by folks in recent days. Very basic, almost administrative structure for the first part, let's say. And most of these, if not all, I think of the questions, by the way, are directed to you both. So we'll just kind of go back and forth with your responses. First is, how do you view the role of a county supervisor? Mr. Kelly?
Well, there's, as I said in the beginning, I feel at this point people need protection. It's protection a lot because there are people that say just raise taxes. And I'm on a fixed income. I don't have to tell you a story about someone out in the lake that I've talked to who's really having a tough time and so forth, because I'm on a fixed income. And I'm concerned. My plan coming to the lake was that I would buy a piece of property and that at some point I could sell that, and if that day came, hopefully later, that I would have to be an assisted living facility that I could sell that property and go into it. I'm concerned about tax rates going up, because when people go to buy a home, the first thing they do, the very first thing, before they even look at how the schools are doing, and by the way, I agree with Mr. O'Brien, our schools are doing great, is they look at how much can we afford. And that's basically the principal amount of the loan, the mortgage rate, and the tax rate. Those figures go into that calculation. Then they walk off and they visit places they might want to live. They find a place and they see if they can afford it. But that's the first step. So I'm concerned about rising tax rates. I'm concerned about the ability to sell property. I'm concerned, frankly, about, this sort of cavalier attitude about it's only a few more dollars. Where does it stop? Where does it stop? That's how, as I said, that's how gasoline got to be a few cents here, a few cents there. It's how gasoline got to be this expensive. I feel that we got to watch the budget, pro and con, help the services out, and also to watch and make sure that no one takes advantage of those people that need the help.
All right. Thank you. Mr. O'Brien, how do you view the role of a supervisor?
Well, the role of the supervisor is, in essence, to guide the county through its budget process and through its investment and into the future. That's something that really has been difficult for our county supervisors to do over the years. This is in part because our county has grown very significantly. In the last 20 years, our county has almost tripled in size. And so the same ideas, the same methodologies that we used in the past aren't working for us any longer. We see deep divisions inside the county as to how we can succeed. We have people tell us that we're broke, we can't afford to do anything, and that any type of growth is the wrong thing. However, the reality is that we've grown. We have grown almost tripled in size, from 10,000, and that was 10,000 people for almost 100 years, to now almost 30,000 people. The 2030 census puts us at about another 32,000, and then we're going to grow to, in 2040, to around 40,000 people. So we're going to continue to grow, and that's going to be a challenge. And so the Board of Supervisors has to tackle that challenge. A good board will look to the future and say, what are we going to do to make sure that we're headed in the right direction? We need to do that in our county. We haven't done that. We have kicked the can down the road repeatedly. We've been talking about making investments in Zion's Crossroads for almost 20 years. We just kicked the can again this week, or not this week, this month. The role of the supervisor is to make sure that we're headed in the right direction and to make the proper investments so that our county is successful.
All right, thank you. This one to both of you once again. We'll start with Mr. O'Brien. What special training or experience would you bring to the Board of Supervisors?
I started off my career in financial services. As a young man, I saved pretty much 25% of my income, and then I was able to take that money and start my own business. I've actually started a number of businesses over the years. Right now, my primary enterprise is a computer services company that's based out of Charlottesville. I employ 15 people, and 4 or 5 of those are from Rivanna County. I think I bring years of experience in the form of making deals happen. I think I bring years of experience in being creative and in understanding how businesses work. I think I bring years of experience in terms of leading and managing people. I believe that what you bring is your ideas, your energy, and your effort. And I think that I have a lot of ideas, I have a lot of energy, and I have a lot of effort to deliver and to bring to the county. When I decided to run, one of the first things that I did was I talked to my employees, and I said, as a business owner, this is an important process for us to mature into serving our counties, into serving our people. This is how we will reach out into the community, how we will show that we have done the right things in the long run. So that's why I'm running.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Kelly, how about your special experience or training that you would bring to the board?
I'm an attorney licensed in 2 states and have been so for 20 years. I'm a problem solver. I know how to research the law. I know what laws apply. I know how systems work. That's the number one thing they teach you in law school, are how the different systems work. And so I bring that to the table. I also have time on my hands, and I know Mr. O'Brien runs a business and he's very busy, but I'm not. I am at home on disability, and so I got a lot of time on my hands. I have to say that Bill Clinton said that if there's a lot of evidence to support the proposition that people will support tax increases if you call it an investment. And so I'm a little confused by saying concerned about tax rates going up, but saying also at the same time we got to spend more, and we call it an investment. The Aqua plant, what a disaster that was, and I thank everyone that helped me, I think, kick that off the table. That was this $20 million, 20-year contract, at the end of which we own nothing, with a company that we don't like, I can speak for the community, that's unconstitutional, and the county administrator doesn't support it. Disaster. Aqua, no way. I'm glad we got rid of that. Thank you.
As a follow-on, how do you distinguish yourself from your opponent? You pointed out one distinction, that you believe you have more time to devote to the job than Mr. O'Brien. Are there other ways?
Oh, very much so. Mr. O'Brien, I think, is saying that when we invest in infrastructure, we're planning for the future. It's the gist of what I hear. One, I'm not sure we've got a ton of money to spend on that, but we've got to spend it wisely. One of the supervisor members said, you got to spend money to make money. Oh my God, that theory doesn't work so good when you're in a casino. So you have to really invest and make sense of where you're spending money. That's the biggest thing I have a problem with, because I can't think you can go out and just say, we need pipeline water. If you throw water up in Zion Crossroad, doesn't mean you get any business. It means you can get business, and certainly I think water is important to get up there, but I want to see a plan that works for us. And by the way, what business is knocking on our door right now? I think our biggest mistake, and where I think I'm very much different than Mr. O'Brien, he says build infrastructure and they will come. Build it and they will come. You got to go get it, and you bring it here with tax incentives and the like. So I think really that is the biggest distinction. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. O'Brien, how do you distinguish?
Well, I mean, I guess if somebody wants to just give us a bunch of money and we don't have to invest, then that's great, but that's not what happens in the real world. Look, as a business owner, I can tell you that basically I've had to go out there and make lots of investments in my life. I can tell you that when I didn't make those investments, my business would be threatened. Every day I have to compete, okay? My business has changed dramatically since when I started it 17 years ago. The reality is that if I did the same things the way I did them 17 years ago, I wouldn't be in business. The fact of the matter is that I make investments every day. I make investments in people, I make investments in infrastructure, I make investment in my ideas and my plans. Do they all work out? No. But I can tell you this idea that Zion's Crossroads is somehow or another not going to work for us is absolutely nuts. In Louisa County, they are generating almost $7 million a year between property and real estate taxes just from what they've got there right now. And they're continuing to grow from that standpoint. We're not seeing any of that. And in fact, we're risking a great deal of that, because what's going to happen is we're going to see residential folks move into the Fluvanna side. And once we lose that land to the residential the services, it's gone for a long, long time. So that's money that we won't be able to recover. That doesn't fix our 93% tax-based problem. So we absolutely have to invest if we plan to succeed.
I'm looking for a way that how these mesh, because you both certainly seem to acknowledge, and I'll get to that. Probably the question leads into the next question, which I'm sure we sort of know the answer to before we ask it. But you get to acknowledge the importance of economic development. Seems to be a matter of how we get there. The build that they will come philosophy versus a more, let's say, targeted or incremental approach Mr. Kelly suggests. I'm reminded, like, if a community goes out to lure a minor league baseball team, the chances are, in most cases, I think, they go out and they try to secure the team before they ante up the money to build the stadium, because they may build the stadium and be unable to get the Fort Wayne Tin Caps to move down here. You know, how do you square that? How do you come out on that, Mr. O'Brien?
Well, again, it's a pretty basic at the end of the day. What happens at Louisa right now is that if you want to build a building that's over 12,000 square feet, you can't do it without making investments in water because you don't have the fire suppression in there. That's problematic for any real substantial type of growth. If I'm going to start a business in that area, am I going to go in and put my own fire suppression system in like Mr. Nunley had to do for Better Living, where he spent $50,000 extra? Or am I going to go across the street to Louisa to do the same thing? The answer is I'm going to go across the street because it's cheaper to do that. Am I going to come to a county that's business friendly and ready to act, or am I going to come to a county that says, you put up the money, if it works out great, that's fine. You know, I'm going to go to a county that has its act together. Rivanna County doesn't have its act together. It keeps on telling people that we're going to just basically do nothing. Do nothing, we're broke. That's what we're going to end up being, nothing and broke. Okay, that's not a solution for success. It isn't about the fact that it's build it and they will come. They are coming. We're off of a highway. This is one of the prime assets that this county has, is being right off of a highway. You can drive up and down highway exits all across the country, and you can see the success of those. But if we're doing nothing, we get nothing. I don't know how else to put it.
Ms. Kelly, we have to acknowledge that Louisa, and I'm not sure, of course, exactly what the timing was, but Louisa did go and get that water from the springs up north of them and build the water tower down there before there was anything in that industrial park, and then, by gosh, they got the Walmart distribution center.
Absolutely true, and we're not going to be like Louisa. No matter how much money we spend, we are not simply a mirror image of Louisa. Louisa is blessed with a confluence of 64 and 250. Most people I've spoken with didn't realize that Rivanna County ended south of 250, just south, but south of 250. And so they have all that interchange on 64. So when they put in businesses, they had that in mind. I mean, what family of four going down 64 with the kids saying, we're hungry, Dad? Dad saying, you know, I need to get gas. We'll pull off on Route 15 and say, don't worry about Burger King, forget McDonald's, don't worry about Blimpies, and I'd rather drive, you know, past to 250 to fill up my tank and feed the kids. It's just not going to happen. We're not Louisa. Now, also, Louisa uses about 100,000 gallons, a little bit more than 100,000 gallons of water a day. The proposal that we've looked at for water, my goodness, Aqua Play was 500,000 gallons of water a day. Mr. Nichols, Mr. Popovich, nobody thinks we're going to need anything like that. The more realistic figure is somewhere just in excess of about 75,000, which, by the way, is what the women's prison says that they have, and that can be upped from there as needed. Incremental steps. Let's think it through. Thank you.
Okay. All righty.
May I respond to that?
Surely, certainly, Mr. O'Brien. Yeah.
Quite frankly, you know, the idea that I'm not going to turn right or left just because it's already there doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Look, 250, you get off of it, they're building a diamond interchange. The diamond interchange is going to drop you off right in between both sides. If you do nothing, again, you're going to get nothing from it. There is plenty of business that's going to come from there. Let me tell you, when somebody's looking at that area, they're not saying, oh, where's the property line between Louisa and Rivanna? Okay, they're looking at what's available in terms of the land space. Louisa, to Mr. Kelly's point of 125,000 gallons, is constrained. The reason that they're building a pipeline, which will cost them in the neighborhood of $30 to $40 million to build, is because they recognize the opportunity, and they know that they don't have enough water there. They are drawing from the spring water, the water wells that they have there, and they know that they're drawing those wells down. They know that they need to bring more water in. Additionally, they're focused on, for Ferncliff, Gum Springs, and the other exits. They recognize that each one of those exits is an economic engine for them, and they are planning on taking advantage for them. You know, we're still stuck in 1999, which is when Louisa and Fluvanna had an opportunity to do something together. We didn't do it. Louisa did it. Louisa, on the other hand, is looking into the year 2050. Okay, they are going to be in a lot better shape than we are by the time they've finished, because they will have made those investments. We don't have the benefit of having multiple exits in the same way that they do. We have basically Boyd Tavern to some degree, but mostly we have Zion's Crossroad, and even down at Ferncliff, that comes in a couple of miles before it hits the Fluvanna side. So that's a little trickier there. So this is an area where we can concentrate and we can make an investment. Passing up on water opportunities is a mistake, and we have been planning on it for years and years. This is almost 20 years now that we've been planning for it.
All right, thank you. You probably answered it in your responses already, but the question was posed, what do you think is the most critical issue in the county, and what do you think needs to be done to resolve it? Mr. Kelly?
Well, I think they're one and the same, really. We have a $100 million debt. We built the high school, it's there, so we deal with it. But part of the problem is we built a high school, it's the most expensive in the state, and we have AstroTurf on the field. I mean, my goodness. But anyway, it's there, we got to pay for it. We did need a school, we didn't need that school. So I think the debt is one, but in conjunction, in tandem with that, of course, are the schools. Now, I've talked to a lot of teachers, and there is a sense of commonality with their complaints. And they're concerned about their futures as well. Now, I will tell you that we're in U.S. News and World Report as one of the better high schools in the nation. I see that we've slipped a little bit on the SOLs and so forth, but largely our student population has been about the same since 2006. So I'm not concerned about that so much. But I am concerned about this debt and our ability to make wise economic decisions given that albatross around our neck. And I want to help the teachers out. I don't want to see furloughs, and that's part and parcel of having this debt. Thank you.
All right. Mr. O'Brien?
Well, clearly economic development is essential to help balance our tax base. I mean, the fact of the matter, it's great to say we want all these things, but the reality of what's been happening over the last years is because we don't have that, we're fighting battles over what we're going to pay in taxes. Okay, Mr. Kelly says we have the highest tax rate. That's like saying 10 times 5 is equal to 10, because you're just picking the number, one number, the rate. Okay, you've got to multiply the two. It's 10 times 5 equals 50, and to that point, we have the second lowest tax rate in the area. We're not making the proper investments. We have the lowest per capita expenditure of all the counties in the area. Okay, so we're not making the investments. So to talk about taking care of our schools when we're not making investments, again, that's why there's a problem in the schools right now. And it's not as good as he points out. Yes, we are ranked 41st, I think, with U.S. News and World Report. But that's not going to stay that way, because at the elementary school levels, we now have 3 schools on warning, on watch, and we have 1 school on warning. We have SOL scores that are below the state averages, and we have teachers that are, not happy about the way they've been treated in the last couple of years. And the way they've been treated is when we had to cut the budget because we didn't want to pay those extra taxes, they were asked to take the brunt of it. If you follow Mr. Kelly's plan of doing nothing, guess what? They're going to be asked to do that more and more. Mrs. Keller, who has said that the schools are dangerously close to the SOQ levels. That means that they could lose accreditation. There's a reason the FEA has unanimously endorsed me. It's because they know I understand what's going on with the schools.
Mr. Kelly, what do you think about that?
First of all, 10 times 50 is 500. The FEA,
That's fine.
I didn't mean to pick on you.
No.
The FEA endorsement's curious. I was approached by them, Ms. Perry's the president, and told I have some questions for you. If you would respond to them, by the way, we don't endorse anyone. And they endorse somebody. Aside from that, I asked her to please, in my response, I mentioned the fact that in 2006, 7 years ago, I was before the Board of Supervisors arguing for higher teacher wages. She didn't want to tell anyone that. She's a partisan, and so I ignore that. But would you repeat your question? I'm sorry, Ron.
It was basically critical, what you think is the most critical issue and what you would do to try to resolve it.
Right, and we could talk about investment all day. I'm sure that Mr. O'Brien, when he talks about his business investments, thinks about them and doesn't just say, I'm going to do this in the hopes it makes money. I'm sure he studies it, and it's deliberate, and it's thoughtful. We're not doing that with the concept of we just need infrastructure, which has been defined as water. We put a pipeline up there, and that's it. But Ferncliff, by the way, is the reason why the Water Authority water is going to Louisa. That's where they're building next. Thank you.
No, that's not accurate. Okay, you're right, 10 times 50 is 500, so that was accurate. But they're building the water because they want it up and down the county. They're running it down to Ferncliff because that was the easiest way to get it down there because they could use a colonial gas pipeline. And they didn't have to worry about the easements within our county as significantly as they would if they ran it any other way, as well as because our county isn't planning on doing anything with it. So that's the reason they're running it down to Ferncliff. It's also a middle point for them, so that's great. But be that as it may, you know, the FEA endorsement does carry some weight. And, you know, quite frankly, Mr. Kelly, in responding to the FEA, said, you know what, it's going to be tough. We're not going to be able to do a whole lot for you. And now he's saying, you know, I want to take care of you, but I have no plan, basically, to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. We're going to see battles every single year over taxes. It's going to happen for many, many years to come. And that's a battle that we're just each going to have to face, and we're going to have to vote our conscience on. But the problem is, fighting that battle without having a plan for changing that direction is not a winning solution. You have to have a plan for changing that direction. That plan is economic development in Zion's Crossroads. There have been over 7 studies, over 20 years. There have been multiple times that this has come to fruition. There have been multiple missed opportunities. We had an opportunity back in 2010 to work with Louisa and the Economic Development Authority in what most people would say would be the right plan for us. We didn't choose to do it. We're passing up opportunities that's costing us more money. Chances are interest rates are going to go up. Chances are construction costs are going to go up. Chances are that there's going to be more environmental problems and issues. These things have been going on. The county hasn't done a good job of presenting those, but they have been doing their homework. There are lots of studies. Zoning plans have been made. Economic development plans have been made. We've hired economic development people. It is not fair to say that the county has been doing nothing.
Ms. Kelly, you look like you have
I'll give you an example of a study we have. And that's the Martha Jefferson partnership. They did a return on investment study this year. They did 2 of them. The first one said we're going to have slow growth and light industry. Okay, that's not, by the way, what Louisa has. So they would disagree with Mr. O'Brien's characterization because we can't get that. That's not in our future. That's not in our plan either, because we want to bring in the fact that we live in a rural community, and we want to bring that into any plan we have as far as business is concerned. I forgot where I was. I apologize.
This is with the Thomas Jefferson studies.
Oh, yeah.
Studies.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. The return on investment study, 2 of them done by them this year. The first one said light growth, light industry. The second one, which strangely, coincidentally, came out right before a vote on that aqua water plan, said, oh no, things are going to be far better than that, far better. And I'm not sure what happened in Fluvanna County this year to change that. Why within this year are those conclusions different? By the way, Stephen Nichols, county administrator, said it was fraught with problems, including they couldn't even do math. So enough with these studies that don't add up to anything.
Okay. Here's another one that presumes, obviously, one of you being elected to the Board of Supervisors. Question is, please explain how, once elected to the board, you would ensure that a feasible economic development plan for Zion Crossroads is enacted, such as securing land for an industrial park, persuading appropriate businesses to locate in Fluvanna, setting a competitive and business-friendly tax rate that will attract commercial interest and thus jobs to Zion Crossroads once a water pipeline is complete. It's something that's getting at both specifics and the overall. Mr. O'Brien, you'd like to shoot at that one first?
Sure. Well, first of all, I think one of the things that we could start off by doing is to change the property tax rate for commercials for the commercial investment side and lower that to closer to the competitive rates of Louisa. I've talked to the Commissioner of Revenue about that right now because we have so little business in our county that would only cost us about $25,000. So that's something we could do right now. Second, a lot of effort has already been made in terms of focusing on the comprehensive plan and zoning arrangements to make that happen. We don't have enough identified properties that are, quote, shovel-ready and what you might call at a Tier 5 level, but efforts are being made on that behalf, and the county is moving forward. Look, one of the things that I've noticed over the last year and a half in attending these board meetings is that the county is headed in the right direction, is trying to make the right decisions. Unfortunately, we're not there 100% yet. We just lost Allison Finchen, who was our planning director, which is unfortunate. That's a blow to the county. But we're going to come back and hire somebody else, and we're going to make sure that that's headed in the right direction there. In terms of the Thomas Jefferson Planning District study, you know, the study was presented a number of times. It was rewritten. There were some issues with it. But the fact of the matter is, even in the slow growth scenario, what it showed is that the county would make money in about 5 years. Without doing anything, what it showed is that the county was going to lose about $300,000 per year. Okay, so doing nothing means you get nothing. In fact, it costs you more. Doing something means, and even in the slow growth scenario, that you're going to get something coming from it. Unfortunately, my time is up, and I can't answer that question in detail.
All right, we can come back to it. Mr. Kelly?
I keep hearing Mr. O'Brien saying the complaint is we can't do nothing. Well, if you invest in infrastructure, invest, and put it up there and hope that business comes, that's close to doing nothing. I've never said anything like that. I said I would be proactive and go get business. I've given several examples, speaking with Rob Bell, about tax incentives, state subsidized tax incentives, to put a carrot out, to give an incentive for a business to relocate here. I've also given you examples of working with the UVA and the patents they come up with. So and by the way, the UVA Alumni Association owns almost 1,000 acres in Fluvanna County. So one thought I had is I would talk to that, the Vice President's Partnership and also the UVA and also the people that own the Alumni Association, see if I can get them to join hands. Let's go after the business. That's hardly doing nothing. That's hardly doing nothing. And so I don't even understand the argument. It's like a straw man. You say, I disagree with the person over there that says do nothing. No one's saying that, Tony. No one's saying do nothing.
Well, which would come first? You can identify the business, but can you say the infrastructure is there or on its way?
Well, I'm in support of water at Zion Crossroads. I've always been. The question is, which plan makes the most sense? And certainly the Aqua plan, for all sorts of reasons, was not a good plan, to say the least. And I also, I talked to Mr. Sheridan as well, Commissioner of Revenue, and our business property tax rate, like Mr. O'Brien said, we're more than double what Louisa charges for a business property tax. Louisa also has BPOL, that is Business Professional Occupational License Tax, that we don't have. So, and also our county tried to get looked at restaurant tax collection, decided it would be more expensive to try and get tax for what little tax there would be there. So I understand all that. I'm wondering about Mr. Sheridan telling me, boy, we get a lot of money off the Tenaska plant from business property tax. So if you lower it, be careful. Be careful.
You would not favor lowering it?
I think, boy, I think you would really have to look at that carefully. I'm not sure that's the kind of business we're talking about anyway. Mr. Faulkner just brought all his equipment over on Louisa's side. That's the kind of business that goes to Louisa because of the lower business property tax rate. Now, we're talking about office buildings. That's a relatively low business property tax. I don't know what you do. If you're going to give up all that money, then you can't afford to help the teachers out.
It's too bad the market changed and we did not get that second power plant after all the hullabaloo.
Absolutely.
Bring in, what, $1 million a year, and the Tenaska and a few, but I guess the market has changed. I don't know.
Well,
Mr.
let
O'Brien?
me respond to a couple of those things. First, Tenaska brings in 1.8 million in the form of utility taxes, not in the form of property. This is fixed property taxes. The fixed property taxes are being primarily assessed on vehicles. That's the primary thing that we're assessing it on right now. County has no plan to say that your computer's worth $100 or $2 or whatever the case may be. They don't even have that in place. But for the sake of quote-unquote being competitive, we should have that. There are certain businesses, if they're really intensive in terms of property, that that would be a disadvantage. Again, as I said, by lowering that, because you can put a bracket in, it would cost the county about $25,000, according to Mr. Sheridan, and you can make a specific bracket for that. That's great, makes us competitive. Mr. Kelly pointed out that, in fact, we don't have a B-poll tax. That makes us competitive. He pointed out that we don't have a meals tax. That makes us competitive. Asking Mr. Bell to come in and have the state give us money is probably a big mistake, because guess what? The reason we're in this problem is because the state's giving us less and less money. And quite frankly, if Mr. Bell could do that, he should have already done it, okay? He's our representative. He should have done that, okay? The other thing, too, is that the business, the idea that you're going to go and talk to the UVA Patent Foundation and say, yeah, come on over here. I understand that you can start a business, but we have no office space for them. And the reason we have no office space is we can't put out a fire if it starts there. Well, that's a no-brainer. That's not going to happen, okay? So if you don't have the infrastructure, you're not going to see anything start, okay? That's just the bottom line. So Louisa made that investment, and it's paid off huge dividends. They generate $7 million just out of the Zion Crossroad area alone. We get almost nothing. We only get $1 million pretty much from our business side, not counting Tenaska.
A bit of a tangent on this, but it occurs not on the economic development side, but even on the residential side. There have been a fair number of subdivisions in recent years. Have we perhaps left money on the table or not investigated proffers as strongly as we should? And first of all, maybe we ought to identify for the folks specifically what a proffer is. Either one?
Sure. The county currently doesn't have a proffer policy, but it will accept proffers, basically. So proffers are basically a developer saying that we will go ahead and provide money for a specific cause. Typically, the way you want to plan for that is to make sure that you have specific causes set out in your CIP plan, and by doing that, you ensure that they allocate a certain amount of money. At yesterday's board meeting, you saw proffers being offered for the Walker's Ridge program there, and they were being offered specifically based on those CIP investments. So they said, we'll give $3,000 for schools, $1,000 for emergency services, and I think they mentioned another $1,000 for something else. So it's close to $5,000. But basically, that's how a proffer policy works. So you want to plan ahead and say, here's what we're going to need down the road, and when you bring in economic, not economic development, when you bring in developers from that standpoint, they're invited to offer those proffers as a way of incentivizing the county to allow that to happen.
Well done, Mr. O'Brien. Well done. How do you feel about the proffer? Well, I think Mr. O'Brien summed it up correctly as far as fitting in with our CIP, which is basically a capital improvement plan. What we need in the county is in our CIP. Let me just say, Rob Bell didn't offer money. I went to him about tax incentives. Of granted state subsidized ones, that's not quite the same. The other thing is we can go to UVA, maybe we can get a laboratory in one of the schools we close. Why do we have to build a new building? Why do we have to spend, spend, spend? It's gotten us in trouble before. It's going to get us in trouble again. I'm not saying don't spend anything, but I think we got to go incremental steps, balancing our major tax burden, $100 million, with our obligations to the teachers, for instance, who I'd like to protect very much. I come from a family of teachers, so I understand teachers well. And like I said, I argued 7 years ago for higher wages for teachers. So you got to go easy. You can't just say, throw money at it and everything will fix out. And by the way, we're going to grow. That's just going to happen.
You mentioned that also in your opening, incremental steps, and you also said in your opening you would fight against tax increases. So what kind of incremental steps do we take, and how do we finance those steps? How do we take them?
Right. Excellent question. There is, I'll give you an example of it, and that's reallocation of money we have in budgets. The school budget is the responsibility of Ms. Keller and the school board, and I think they've done a pretty darn good job given what they've had to work with. However, there are some areas I take issue with, and I do so from talking with teachers. A teacher told me just yesterday, she said that there was a secretary that retired not too long ago, high school education, working for the administrators, not for teachers, and she made $85,000 a year. I mean, my goodness, what are the administrators making? They're making six figures at least. I would say this. I believe in economies of scale. That I worked, my job in the Capital Defender's office, I started at $85,000, and I was charged with saving people's lives if I could. We really have to look at our budget and see what we're doing. By the way, the state put out, we did an audit in 2012, and it looked at really part of the audit was number of teachers to the number of administrators, you could say, but support staff, you could say also. And we are 2 to 1, whereas the state was recommending closer to 4 to 1. So we can look at this budget, find the fat, and it's there, and absolve the teachers of any of that kind of issue by looking at this and reallocating correctly. Money's there.
May I respond?
Shirley, Shirley.
I actually have a copy of the school budget here. This is, let's see, which school is this one here? I think this is one of the elementary schools. Office of the principal, salaries and wages, $84,000. So if you're a principal with a master's or perhaps a PhD, you make $84,000. Clerical salary and wages, $43,000. I don't think that's $80,000. You know, they're not getting paid that much. They haven't, in fact, gotten raises in almost 5 years. The idea that somehow or another we're going to find the necessary cuts on the administrative side is going to be tough. 82% of the school budget goes to salaries. I believe about 15% of the school system is in the form of administration. Okay, there aren't enough cuts to be made. And Mr. Kelly, I think, comes out and says, I want to take care of teachers, but the first thing I'm going to do is cut teachers. Okay, I don't understand that. I mean, that basically doesn't work. You know, the problem is that we have basically cut teachers over and over and over again, and they've lost out in that equation. We have, again, not given them raises in almost 5 years. We asked them to take cuts in their form of their health insurance plans. We asked them to take cuts in the form of the disability plans. This is not a friendly environment for teachers. The reason they're leaving is because they can get better opportunities elsewhere. They love our kids here. They care about our kids, but they need to hear from our community that we care about them. And you can't get that from them when you go out and say, okay, well, we're going to cut you even more.
Mr. Kelly, you're looking as if
Never said I was going to cut teacher salaries. I never said that. Quite the contrary. I will read this study done. Robinson, Farmer, and Cox Associates, CPAs, October 10, 2012. This is a comparison of Fluvanna Public Schools fiscal year 13 budget, the state of Virginia required program expenditures. In it, to say, we note that the state is projecting funding for 330 instructional and support staff. The division, 264 teachers instructional and 66 support. The Fluvanna County budget, school budget, however, are going to do 346 instructional and 158 support. So what I've argued, and I've said this before, is that there's fat in this budget. We don't need all these ministers, and the teachers are mad about them. I am not going to cut teachers' salaries. I don't want them furloughed. But there's fat in this budget. There's unnecessary expenses going on. We need to look closer at this budget as we do the Fluvanna County budget overall. We are required to do that as supervisors. I'm going to do that. Thank you.
No?
So,
Mr. O'Brien.
I'm struggling with that. Basically, we have almost the lowest per student expenditure of all the surrounding counties. Okay, we spend about $9,200, say in comparison to Albemarle, where they spend closer to $14,000. Just to compare to Louisa, we'd have to spend almost $25 million more on our schools. But somehow or another, even though we're at the lowest levels, or second lowest levels in the area, there's plenty of fat in there, according to Mr. Kelly. However, if you actually sat at a board meeting and watched the board discuss the upcoming needs for the budgets, you would have noted that pretty much across the board, all the supervisors said there isn't anything left to cut. Okay, we are dangerously close to standards of quality levels, which means that we could lose the accreditation of our schools. Okay, that's a problem, guys. You know, people move to this area because of the quality of schools, as well as other things. And if we don't have good schools here, we are going to lose out in a big way. We will see our property values decline. The idea that we can continue to find savings within our schools when we have the lowest per capita spend is absolutely nuts, okay? Doesn't make any sense. We have to take care of our schools. It's one of the reasons why I'm running. I understand this problem very well, and I take great offense to the idea that we're going to be able to somehow or another find extra fat in a system that has basically been decimated, okay? Basically been decimated. It's unacceptable.
Concerning the school funding and its obviously prominent place in any tax base, had you been in that light, had you been on the Board of Supervisors, Mr. O'Brien, would you have voted for the current tax rate?
Not only would I have voted for the current tax rate, I in fact suggested that they at least equalize it. People need to understand that we didn't even equalize our rate. We actually gave citizens a cut this year. They got a $40 tax cut on average. The equalized rate would have been closer to about 81 cents. We ended up at 79.5 cents. Okay, we gave ourselves a cut. We asked teachers to take a pay cut. Okay, that's not cool. All right, so no, in fact, I stood up at that board meeting and I said, this is not okay. We need to do more for our teachers. Joe Chesser, who's in this room here, said, you know what, we could have probably risen it to 82 or 83 cents. There was no reason we couldn't have done that. We spend, again, despite what the rate is, we have the second lowest property tax burden in the area, okay? In the area, the second lowest property tax burden. We're competing with Buckingham. That's who we're competing against, okay?
And
so,
tax bills
yeah.
were received today in some cases, I think. For this. Mr. Kelly, would you have voted for the current tax rate? You've been on the board.
Well, I think Mr. O'Brien makes a good point on the equalization rate. Now, mind you, when he says, you know, we gave people a break this year, we hadn't had an assessment in 6 years. So these inflated real estate prices, okay, the fair market value was well below I'm going to get it confused as I always do. There's assessed value and fair market value. The fair market value was well below the assessed value, well, we didn't do it. We do that we were doing it every 6 years. I applaud Mel Sheridan, by the way, for suggesting we do it 2 years, and hopefully that will go through, because I think we're in a bumpy ride for a while yet. By the way, the teacher that spoke to me and said that the secretary was earning $85,000, I don't think lied to me. So to say that's ridiculous,
Please.
well, they didn't make a mistake. I know your fans are out here, Mr. O'Brien, but I'm not going to respond to their comments. She wasn't lying about this. She wasn't lying about this.
No.
Well,
I think we can go on to another question.
Can I talk about the equalization rate, though? Because there is some confusion out there.
All right.
Okay. You know, again, I've been told my microphone. Okay, at essentially, and I agree with Mr. Kelly here, the county had basically a policy of not performing assessments. So we performed an assessment in 2007, and then we performed one again, or 2006, and then we performed one again in 2012, which happened to more or less correspond with the top and the bottom of the real estate market. So we saw property values decline by almost 30%. However, when you equalize, that's where we come back to that formula of 10 times 50 or 50 times 10. They both equal 500. The objective of equalizing is to make sure that you, in fact, can't raise taxes through an equalization. You have to first equalize, and then you have to decide to raise or lower the taxes. Those are separate moves that the board is required to take. So equalization means basically you paid exactly the same in property tax that you paid no matter what the assessment was. So therefore, for example, back in 2007 when we equalized, we dropped the property tax rate from 69.5 cents down to 44 cents. I went back and looked at my house there, and I looked at what I would have paid in taxes in 2006 based on the projected value for that. I'm sorry, 2008 versus in 2012. It was a total difference of about $200. So it worked out to about 3% per year increase. Okay, that's basically what our property taxes increased in the last 5 years, despite the change in the property values.
All right. Mr. Kelly's shaking his head no here.
well, I think I'm in agreement. I'm not quite sure that I came
okay.
there.
I thought it was a negative shake.
Well, I'm not sure I came there with the same path. Let me mention real estate tax. I'm a little confused. The lowest tax rate in this, that we're mixing all sorts of numbers here together, folks. It's very simple. We have a 79.5 cents per $100 of value tax real estate tax rate. And we are the most expensive county in Central Virginia, higher than Albemarle. Higher than Albemarle, folks, at 76.6. Now that's the home of Howie Long, Sissy Spacek, and John Grisham. I am paying a lot. I agree that the equalization rate makes sense. I wouldn't necessarily be against that. But I got to know that I can live. I don't have cable TV. Okay? I mean, if you got a lot of money, then this amount of money is no big deal. I don't. And there's a whole lot of me's in the lake. You think I'm the only one on a fixed income? That's ridiculous. And I'm glad that you could afford it. I'm glad, you know, you can have a big house on the lake. That's wonderful. And I'm not saying that flippantly. I'm saying that I applaud your success. But I am saying there are a lot of us out there who don't have that success on a fixed income. We need protection from always increasing taxes.
I do have to respond to that,
All right,
unfortunately.
Mr. Ryan.
Okay,
Okay,
I mean, again, I just don't know how to say it. You know, 5 times 10, 50 times 10 doesn't equal 10, or it doesn't equal 50. It equals 500 or 50, whatever you want to do it from that standpoint. The bottom line is the rate doesn't matter. Okay, it's what you pay. Okay, and you are paying the second lowest amount of all the areas. Okay, that's what matters. We have had people, in fact, I've had conversations with people in this county saying our messaging is screwed up because we get out there and we say, oh my God, we have the highest rate in the area. You know, and people hear that, and people who don't actually do the math say, oh, that's a terrible county to live in. No, we have the second lowest burden in the area, okay, period. All right, the second lowest burden in the area. And guess what? When you don't take care of your schools, people don't want to live here. They want to move somewhere else. So what happens? Your property values continue to stagnate or they decrease, okay? And there's a big difference between paying another $20 a month in taxes and losing $20,000 on your house. And a lot of people here, fixed income or not, have seen that they are underwater, and they're not happy about it. And they're underwater in the tens of thousands of dollars. They want to see their property values restored. We're not going to restore our property values unless we make wise investments into the future, period.
Please, we'll hold that for afterward, please. I'd like to get out of the tax weeds here to a few Lake Monticello specific items folks have asked about. When he was on the Board of Supervisors a few years ago, Gene Ott was very active in working both with the county and with VDOT to try to secure funding, rights of way, whatever was needed to either and/or close and/or augment the Monash Gate, the Tufton Gate along 53, and the plan that the lake has to put in a substitute gate on the other side over by Lafayette Drive. For the county, basically, it certainly can be viewed as a safety issue. That 53 intersection is nasty, particularly for commuters. For the lake, trying to arrange for the other gate is a financial issue because there is a certain amount of money required, no doubt. If elected to the board, what do you think you might be able to do to help further this cause? That is, if you believe in it. Mr. Kelly, any thoughts?
I have honestly not looked into that particular matter, other than I've heard anecdotally all the people say, oh my God, I saw a terrible accident out there the other day. It's a terrible, terrible intersection. I think we can all agree with that. There's a turn lane going in one direction, not the other. That doesn't make any sense. Having said that, VDOT does have large state money for safety issues in particular. Now again, I have not researched that particular issue. But I can tell you, I can certainly find out what funds are available. And by the way, there's federal transportation funds available for safety purposes on roads. So there's funding out there, but I'm not sure what the cost would be, and I'm not sure how that cost would be borne out as far as the state and federal funding that's available for this.
Mr. O'Brien?
The VDOT is pretty active with the Board of Supervisors. Mr. Denuzio, I think, is there on almost a quarterly basis, if not, talking about different road issues. So I know that this is an important part of the process of being a Board of Supervisors. I also have recently had the experience of in my office building that we just moved into because of the way that they changed the traffic patterns there near Stonefield. Now my office has become the turnaround. Because everybody's turning in and they've got to go back around and do that. So we have been working with the local police there to get them to enforce the no turnaround sign that we have there. So bad traffic decisions can result in bigger problems. I'm not a traffic engineer or expert, but I certainly would work as I would with any other constituent issue to solve these kinds of problems when they're brought to me.
Okay. This one is recognizing that Lake Monticello police appear in court basically in progressing a charge, or particularly traffic court, and they may have to go down and spend time and the like, but we get no share from the county of the fines that are issued to the driver. Question is, are you willing to raise the issue of reimbursement for Lake Monticello police for that time spent in traffic court? Mr. O'Brien?
I'm a little unclear on the issue. I have talked a little bit about it with the sheriff from that standpoint, so I'm not going to say this with confidence, but my understanding is basically that the police force here is more or less considered a private police force, and therefore it doesn't participate in that benefit from there. I know that there have been a number of conversations between the Sheriff's Office and our local police force on different ways that they could work together. I think there could be benefits on both sides, and I would certainly work with both our Chief of Police here and the Sheriff to try to resolve some of those challenges from that end.
Yeah, maybe a way of brokering that somehow, Mr. Kelly? What do you think of yourself as a broker in that regard, maybe?
Well, yes, I'll tell you what's happened, and that is this. We had a different clerk of the district court not long ago, and that's changed here, not really this year. There was some, I'm not sure what you call it, but there was some reticence at least to giving that portion of the fines and so forth that go along with a speeding ticket to put that toward the lake. So the lake was getting no money from the tickets, largely because this clerk decided she wasn't going to let the lake have it. That turned into this, a policy, now forgive me, Chief Beauvais, but a policy basically of not writing tickets below 35, really below 40 miles an hour, better said 35. And so you see the speeds around Jefferson have gone up. And that's because those tickets, we weren't getting the money from them, so we said, why bother writing them? Now we have a new clerk down there that I know well, Kim Warner. I'll be happy to speak to her about this. I'm sure the Chief Beauvais would be appreciative of that as well. And I think it'd be a safer place all around, especially all the kids, all the people walking dogs, and everything else we have at the lake. So I could easily broker that, I think.
And a quick point of clarification, too. I believe that the other issue at hand is the fact that the roads are privately owned here, and that's a problem as well, too. So I don't think that the issue is a private police force. That's inaccurate. I think it's more to do with the road. So I just want to clarify that. This is a conversation I had about 6 months ago. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, fine. You're both lake residents, as we stated at the top. Do you have any specific thoughts for possibly creating better relationships between Lake Monticello and the rest of the county? As a member of the Board of Supervisors, anything you can think of that you might be able to do in that regard? Looking at each other. Join hands and we sing Kumbaya. What is it? Ms. Kelly?
Yeah, we're an anomaly in this country. We have a gated community that consists of 45% of the population of the county. And nowhere else in the United States do you have that. So you have a population, really we've become a small town. We're a bedroom community for sure to Charlottesville. But Lake Monticello is a small town of people that, if you ask out in the county, are foreigners, because they come from New York and New Jersey, largely. That's where it was marketed, the lake. And they've come down here, and then out in the county, they have large tracts of land, many, not all. So it's a cultural thing, it's a language thing. One side talks about biscuits, the other side talks about bagels. So it's tricky. It's tricky. There's a little bit of vestige of the old Civil War still going on. So what can we do about that? Well, Moselle Booker, for instance, a lovely person, I love her. But, there are projects that the lake, through a representative, for instance, can get involved in that helps out her district. And you would expect her to be able to do something for our district. And that starts the communication. That's when people get involved and do good things for each other, and that's where I think it starts. We can help the Fork Union Sanitary District needs help, and their Thornhill Furniture Supply down there has got wells, we got water down there, and we could possibly do something with that to help out her district. I think that's how it begins.
Mr. O'Brien?
Well, I do think that it's very important that everybody recognize that as a citizen, they play an important role. It's easy to live in a bubble inside of the lake, but the reality is that decisions are being made outside of the lake for you. And those decisions matter, the quality of our schools, the investments that we make in Zion's Crossroads. One of the problems that our county has had is not done a good job with messaging. They do a lot of work, but messaging is often a little mixed up. And we've seen that happen. We saw that recently with the LMOA board come out and speak about the water issues. Well-intentioned, good ideas out there. Should have happened earlier. People come into the dialogue late. I think that the county has to do a better job with messaging. I'd like to see, I know that I will participate more actively with the local LMOA board from that standpoint. It would be great if the other board supervisors were here as well, too, to hear our ideas. They're going to be working with us, one of us they'll be working with. So it'd be good if Mr. Oldenbrook and Mr. Weaver were here right now to see what was happening in this debate and hear about these issues. So I think that we all can do a better job of understanding that we should be together in the role of caring about our community. And the community isn't just about the lake. The community is about the county. And a lot of people in the county think that the lake is crazy as well, too, right? You know, they're mad at the lake because it grew, and they think we're ruining their way of life. So it's a balance. You know, we're divided. We have to work to bring that division together so that we all recognize that our county is the great county that it is.
Thank you. That's a great note. There are some other questions here. We promised you we would test your patience and your stamina with an hour's worth of questions, and we have had that. There are a couple of others we could go on, but I think that's a very nice note to end the question and answer period on, and you've been terrific in that regard. Believe me, I think you've both been very responsive and articulate in your answers, and have really lent a lot of energy, I think, to this the whole, call it the campaign, but the whole appearance of both of you in this time, to give us all a much better understanding of who you are and what you're about. So with that, why don't we move on to the closing statement of up to 2 minutes. We'll do it in the reverse order. So I guess that means we start with you, Mr. O'Brien.
Again, I'd like to thank the board, Mr. Krause and Mr. Kelly, for being here. It's always great to have these spirited debates. When this election is over, Mr. Kelly and I have promised to at least congratulate each other. I guess I'm not being heard again. And I think congratulations is due to anybody who puts themselves out to help the county from that standpoint. So, you know, I'm running because I see that there are certain things that need to happen to secure our future. And those things are that we need to focus on economic development. We need to focus on our messaging. We need to bring this county together so that they understand what are the good things about our county and promote that outside into the community. This will help to strengthen our property values. Better property values will make us a stronger community across the board. Okay, it will allow us to invest in the core services that right now are being decimated because we haven't figured out how to do that. So I think it's very important. This is a very important election right now because it's going to set the course for the next couple of years. We have literally been talking about these issues for 20 or 30 years in many cases, but it's no longer a matter of it being, you know, not important because the pressures are here. We're seeing significant pressures being brought onto our core services. We're seeing the deterioration of those core services, and we're seeing the impact on our real estate values. We can go further to the black, and the black meaning that, you know, we're starting to head in the right direction, or we can go further into the red, which means that we're seeing a greater loss of those property values. I think it's a very important time for our county. I think it's very important that everybody gets out there and votes this time around, and they vote their conscience, they vote their ideas. Today you were presented with very different viewpoints on how this county can succeed. You were presented with the viewpoint that, well, let's be smart and careful, and if we go out and take care of teachers but we don't have the money, somehow or another it'll be okay. Or you were presented with the viewpoint of, we have to make these investments to succeed. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Kelly.
Mr. O'Brien, I thought we were going to go for a beer and the winner pays. I think I haven't heard from Mr. O'Brien how he's going to attack this debt. We have $100 million in debt, and you've got to do something about it. We barely touched the principal on it. So that's a factor. You have to put that into the equation. That's why I say you have to balance things. Am I for the equalization rate? I am open to hearing about it. Sure, I'm not saying no to that by any means. But I do think that property values are, well, let me put it this way. In July, and just the other day, in the Daily Progress, Charlottesville was celebrating the fact that the real estate sales went way up, 26%, I believe. And in July, there was an article about 11% increase for the entire central Virginia area except Rivanna. And I think the reason for that is because it's expensive to live here. Aside from aqua, water prices at the lake, if you're living at the lake, and dues and so forth, there's a lot to be paid for, I understand that. But 79.5 times $100 in value is simple math. That's simple math. And that's what we got. And when people go buying a house, that's a big factor. And so our sales have really plummeted. That's why. When you talk about values, supply and demand, okay? I mean, that's why our houses aren't selling. I got to be able to sell my house. I need protection. I'm on a fixed income. I'm one of those people out there. There's a balance that needs to be struck. So I thank Mr. O'Brien. I think we've gotten along just fine. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Well, this concludes the special Fluvanna County Board of Supervisors Election Forum. The LMOA broadcast group hopes that it has been helpful both to the candidates in articulating your views and to the community in arriving at informed voting decisions. And speaking of voting, Election Day will be Tuesday, November 5. The election precinct for the I'm going to get into that. Rivanna, I believe, is at the club. They got it easy. Folks who are here in the lake who have the Cunningham district, remember to go down. It's a bit of a hike, but it's okay. It's a nice drive in the county. You get to learn the county down on Rolling Road, Antioch Baptist Church, and Palmyra is I don't know, wherever it is. So anyway, we appreciate the excellent questions submitted by residents and the cooperation of the LMOA Communications Manager, Peggy Alexander, and LMOA's administrative staff. And we, of course, particularly appreciate the cooperation, the appearance here tonight of the Board of Supervisors candidates, Rick Kelly and Tony O'Brien, and especially their willingness to give of themselves by seeking to serve on the county's governing body. How about now we can show our applause to both of them, if you will. This forum will be rebroadcast on the famous Channel 977 at 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. beginning tomorrow through October 24 at 9 a.m. Please tell your friends, neighbors, and your enemies who may have missed this broadcast so that they can learn and appreciate the views of both candidates. So, for the LMOA broadcast group, I'm Ron Kraus. We thank you very much for watching, and good day.